who is the director of the Convention of the States Project, has done tremendous work at a grassroots level. He's a superstar in terms of grassroots organizing for liberty, organizing for the Constitution. But more relevant to today's discussion, he's also a co-founder of the Tea Party. And, it really pains me to think back that it's been 10 years now. I can't believe it. Since that time, very nostalgic, because I think we all felt that. I remember thinking, in the spring of 2009, and I guess really we're talking about more than 10 years now. But yeah, that makes sense. Where, oh my gosh, this is like, maybe it's a good thing Obama was elected. We finally got the band of brothers together. We got the Sons of Liberty together. We're not just going after Obama, but after the Republican Party, and to actually start something new. And then it got hijacked all into, you guessed it, the Republican Party. The rest is history. And now, 12 years later, the stakes are so much higher. The tyranny we are facing from Republican governors, much less Democrat ones, as we just talked about in Ohio, in states that Trump won resounding victories in, may as well be California. Everywhere we turn, Mark, here's what I want to know from you. Everywhere we turn, there is no redress. The courts that give redress to illegal aliens and criminals tell us, speak to the hand. Get out of here. Okay, so then Republicans, well, no, they're just as into masked Nazism as the Democrats. Nowhere to go. No red state, no red county. I don't know where to move to. You want to talk about it? Nope. Anything critical of masks will be censored, won't be published. So we're losing our ability to even speak out. If you notice, what they seem to be doing is forcing us, Mark, into one thing that we can do. Because if you kind of noticed, every peaceful avenue of redress, and that evidently includes fair elections too, has gone out the window. Looking back on those 12 years, what are the similarities and differences? What are the things we can learn? Where do we go from here? Mark, take it away.
All right. Well, I want to back up first and talk a little bit about the Tea Party movement itself and what it accomplished and what it failed to accomplish. I think the big accomplishment of the Tea Party movement was to change the narrative. One of the things that you're talking about so boldly here today, you hear a lot of folks on the right talking about now, and that is just what are our God-given rights? What are our constitutional rights? And how is that supposed to throttle or restrain the politicians within our system? Whether it does or not is another discussion. But back in 2009, and frankly, prior to the Tea Party movement, very few people were talking about that. That was just not a mainstream conversation. I would say that very few people had read the United States Constitution. I can tell you, I went through law school and we didn't read it or studied in law school. You took con law, but you actually never read the Constitution. Today, because of the Tea Party movement, in my opinion, more Americans than ever before by percentage basis, and it's a huge percentage, have read the United States Constitution. Millions of them were distributed during the Tea Party movement. Many, many tens, if not hundreds of millions more since. I meet people all over the country carrying around a pocket Constitution. They know the Constitution. They've read it. There's been a fundamental shift in the mentality of the American public. We actually understand that we have a Constitution. Most people, I would argue, understand that we have God-given rights that should be protected by that Constitution. So I think there was a narrative shift that took place during the Tea Party movement. That was the great success of the movement. The second success of the movement is that it disappeared. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but every successful political movement should go away. And what I mean by that is if you stay in the streets screaming and yelling, which we all did a lot of, then no change happens. Change happens from inside the system. And so what happened is a lot of these folks went in and started to infect the system with Tea Party ideas. And if you look at this presidential, not this one, but the last presidential election that elected Donald Trump as our president, I would argue that was sort of the end game of the Tea Party movement. While Trump was by no means a Tea Party candidate, if you look at the majority of the candidates that faced off against him, a lot of them rose up through the Tea Party movement. Whether we love them or not anymore, These are folks, you've got Rand Paul, you've got Marco Rubio, you've got Ted Cruz. All of these guys came out of the Tea Party movement, and a lot of these guys still speaking like Tea Partiers. So it's important to remember what happened is a lot of guys like that. And I'm naming guys that are sort of at the top of the political ecosystem. But as I travel around the country, what you do is you meet Tea Party folks in every level of the political system now. You meet them in governor's offices. You meet them in state legislatures. They're in Congress. People will say to me, hey, Mark, I've been following you since the beginning of the Tea Party movement. I went into politics because of what you and a bunch of us were doing at the time. So I think it did a very good job of infusing the system with a new set of people. Was it enough? The answer is unequivocally no. Like a lot of those people got eaten by the system. The system had all kinds of structural flaws that we're trying to address with the Convention of States. And so that's kind of the history. Where are we now compared to then? I think, as you described, we are, in my opinion, in much more precarious times now. And we're in more precarious times because I believe that those that are enemies of liberty are much, much bolder today. They're much more aggressive today and much more open about the things that they're doing. They say them openly. They are trying to push our country into totalitarianism, socialism, communism, whatever you want to call it. I describe it as a form of fascism, actually. And so I think we are, because of those things, in a much more precarious position than we were back in the days of the Tea Party.
So the question is, how do we catch lightning in the bottle? And what I mean by that is this. I am by no means conceding that Biden won. In fact, I believe he did not win. But, I'm just gaming this out, assuming Biden will be sitting in the Oval Office. Although, as you all know, everything we're talking about applies even if Trump is, because the tyranny we're seeing in the States has occurred in Trump's first term, and they're very much emboldened. I am shocked at what is going on with these lockdown policies. I mean, it is getting worse. They appear to have been emboldened since the election. And that includes states like Ohio and Utah. And here's what I don't understand. You work very closely with state legislators. You know them better than most people because of the Convention of the States project, that you've successfully gotten a number of these Republican legislatures on board. It's already passed. And this is not just some funny money stuff. This is a real live constitutional amendment. This is a live ball that's still in play. But on the other hand, I'm looking and I see 24 states where Republicans control the trifecta. And that is where they control the governorship, the House, the Senate. And in more than half of those states, they have super majorities beyond a filibuster in a given state Senate. And what I don't understand is this. Why is it that there is not a single one of those states that we could point to as our equivalent of California? In fact, a lot of them are California. I mean, the blue version of it, meaning they have the California policies. Ohio, I talked about super majorities in both houses. They picked up more seats in the House this past time. You have other states. I mean, like Utah, I don't even know what's going on there with the mask fascism, with the National Guard being used to violate Fourth Amendment rights and spy on people. I mean, this is unbelievable. Shouldn't we be going into the January legislative sessions across the nation with supermajorities where people like me and patriots who live in states like Maryland could say, you know what? That's a state I could go to even if Joe Biden is president. And I could live out my life, liberty, property, worship the way I want, not be forced to wear a diaper, not have my kids abused and traumatized in school, not have the businesses shut down, have free commerce, be safe from criminals, and have the law enforcement be used against violent people, not against us. Mark, show me a state where I can go and I'll move there.
Well, I don't think there is one at the state level. And this is really interesting. You and I talked about this yesterday. I told you I'd reach out to my contacts in Utah, very deep contacts in the Utah legislature, also in the grassroots and at the county and city level all over Utah. So I made a few phone calls because one of the things that I had said to you is I think Utah is one of the best run states in the country. But you have the governor, Herbert, who has just issued a statewide mask mandate. I mean, looks a lot like California, a bunch of other stuff in addition to the mandate. And so I wanted to dig in because I know Utahns, and they're not really copacetic with this kind of stuff. So I wanted to figure out what was going on. I went and first looked at the COVID numbers in Utah. And what I saw is it's basically flat everywhere except for Salt Lake County, right? The main city in Utah. And that is the case count is skyrocketing. Important to note, as it is pretty much all over the country, the death rate's not going up, right? And so we're better at treating it. We realize that there are a lot of people who are getting it who aren't getting sick. We're doing a lot more testing. So there's some misleading stuff. There's a head fake going on in the statistics. But nonetheless, the case count's going up in Salt Lake County. The governor there, Herbert, is termed out. So he's got about 8 weeks left total in his term. And he is a Republican, as you said. And he has a health department director who's an epidemiologist who definitely is a leftist Democrat. That's where she is. She comes out of Chicago. She's a leftist. She's putting on all kinds of public pressure that they need to be doing mask mandates and all this stuff to, quote unquote, flatten the curve. We might have heard that before, huh? Anyway, what I was told by people all across the state is nobody actually cares what the governor says. I talked to lots of people. They're having, they have big families there. They're having big family gatherings. They're not supposed to be doing this. They're generally not wearing masks. If you're in Salt Lake County, that county itself has become fairly liberal, Democrat dominated. You see masks all over the place. You get outside of Salt Lake County, nobody cares. Nobody's paying attention. A lot of people believe it's just Herbert saying, I got 8 weeks to go. I don't want to mess with this. I don't really care. I'll throw in a mask mandate. There are also a lot of people, I had a bunch of people tell me this, that they think he's doing it because he wants to relieve all this stuff before Thanksgiving. And so his latest order is just a 2-week order, and they expect that he's going to reverse all this stuff in 2 weeks and say, hey, I did what you asked me to do. Now it's Thanksgiving and people go do what you want. People in Utah generally are doing what they want once you get outside of Salt Lake County. So I'm not saying that's how we want the states to operate, but that's just the practical reality on the ground.
So, you're bringing up another point, which is, we talk about states, but then it goes to the county level, and there's over 3,000 counties. Easily, Trump will wind up winning 80% of them, and a significant number of them he's going to win by a very wide margin. And we find that all the time. And I think what we spoke about last time was that, people laugh and say there's no one living in these counties, and all the ones that have the big populations are Democrat, and that's fine. But the reality is that when you have a county, you have its own unique unit of government, its own sovereign jurisdiction, and you control that just as much as you control LA County with 10 million people. Okay? And if anything, as an individual living in a county with 30,000 people, well, you have more per capita control.
Yes.
So my point is we should have hundreds, but really even, well over 1,000 counties that easily, this stuff is a non-starter. And this is my question for you and the challenge for you on recreating what the Tea Party looked like in 2009, but what is so much more robust and speaks to the time we live in now, is a movement of an American sanctuary where we should have numerous states, and certainly at the very minimum, counties, where it becomes very clear, and I think it needs to be some sort of declaration of rights, where they adopt, this is what we're doing. Violations of the First, Second, and Fourth Amendments under the guise of corona fascism is a non-starter here. Rioting and maiming, people and looting and rioting is a non-starter over here. That just doesn't happen. Biden might be doing his things. He might be doing things internationally, nationally. He might promulgate some executive orders. This doesn't happen here. This is a tyranny-free zone. This is a constitutional sanctuary. There is a need for that, and I feel typically Republicans do get more righteous when there's a Democrat in office. So there's a lot of potential. We have the people that are activated. 85% of Republicans believe that the election was stolen. Yet Trump, who had all these rallies, probably not going to go away no matter what.
No, he's not going away.
That's my question. I feel like we have, amidst all the darkness, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do that surgery. Not this just like, okay, let's just put the gauze pad on. Like, okay, no, like to really, at least in parts of the country, do what we've always needed to do and not just staunch the immediate concerns we have, but to really go back and return to constitutional governance. My audience is looking for guidance on that. And that's what we're all struggling with, where we go next. I want to see what some of your incipient thoughts are on this.
Okay, I think you and I are in the same place. And if I were to take the lead or look at a model, Virginia, we all now concede has become a blue state because of Northern Virginia. But the state geographically is not a blue state. Geographically, 85-90% of the state is very conservative. And there's a huge Second Amendment movement in Virginia right now because the legislature moved against guns very hard. The citizens organized. Right now, and this is a number goes back to August, I think it's a little more now, but 130 cities and counties across Virginia have approved some kind of Second Amendment sanctuary statement. 86 of Virginia's 95 counties, at least last time I looked, had declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries. And I think this is a great model for us. I think what we need to do is start doing this. And I would argue not on a state by state basis. We should do it on a county by county basis, that maybe cities. And people and cities and counties should declare themselves American sanctuaries. And I would say that the best way to describe that is constitutional sanctuaries. Right, we're going to live according to the original intent of the Constitution. That's the way our laws are going to be. Those are the only laws that we're going to enforce. And I can tell you, when you look at these 86 of Virginia's 95 counties, I mean, one of the things they're doing is their sheriffs are just saying, hey, yeah, if you're going to impose laws that aren't according to the Second Amendment, then we're just not going to enforce them. So we need to get law enforcement on our side. We need to go out to all these rural counties, and we need to have them declare themselves constitutional sanctuaries.
No, and that's exactly the point. I mean, I'm looking for a vacation home with my extended family, kind of a second home to get away from all this anarchy and tyranny in rural Pennsylvania. But, and there's a lot of good Trump counties there. I mean, we saw that energy counties that he won with 80% there. For that matter, I'm not too far from West Virginia, where you have the trifecta supermajorities. They picked up more seats. But, I mean, that Jim Justice guy is with the mask mandates and the school fascism and the child abuse every bit as much as our Democrat and all but name only governor here in Maryland. And I think that's our job. And I think there's no reason why we can't just make it very clear to these people, hey, buddy, this is what you're doing. Let me throw out another thing to you, Mark. There's a runoff coming up on January 5th in Georgia right now. Now, personally, my belief is Democrats already have control of the Senate, and they always have, and they always will. But, okay, I'll indulge the game that this is the most important Senate compound runoff that we've ever had. Okay, well, Republicans have a 62.5% majority in the state Senate there. So you get beyond the filibuster. They have the House like 105 to 75. They have a Republican governor. Why are mail-ins not banned? I mean, this is where is the pressure on the legislators?
Well, I think because, to put it bluntly, they're lame. There's a narrative that has flowed out across the land that if you're against mail-in voting, then you're a racist. And it's literally that simple. It sounds funny. Barack Obama has said this. And so that narrative is out there, and it's played fairly successfully to cow Republicans so that they do as they're told. I believe, Daniel, and maybe I'm overly hopeful, but I believe that's going to change. I'm talking to legislators all over the country right now, and at the very top of their agenda right now for the coming session is cleaning up the electoral system. And every single one that I'm talking to at the top of that agenda on cleaning up the election system is getting rid of mail-in ballots. And so whether they actually have the intestinal fortitude to do it, I'm always doubtful because most legislators don't. But this is where we come in as citizens, right? If once in a while the legislatures try to do the right thing, and our job is to go wild in support of them. It's pretty rare they do the right thing, but we have to step up. And normally what we do, to be honest, when they do the right thing, we pretty much ignore them. and then we just attack them when they do the wrong thing. That's the kind of the easy default position.
Yeah.
So what we have to do right now as citizens, one is push them to do the right thing, which is we need you to do away with mail-in voting. There are really two primary things, by the way, that would clean up our voting system. And we're putting together a package of this stuff right now. But the two primary things are voter ID in every state and doing away with mail-in voting. That would clean up a lot of it. There's other things we need to do. We need to get the dead people off the rolls, clean up the voting rolls as well as we can, and we can do a lot of that. There's some cross references we need to do with the death database, with the U.S. mail database for moving, so we can clean up a lot of this. And I think that package of legislation is going to make its way fairly easily through Republican legislatures in 2021, but it's up to us to be involved in that process.
Now, when you're talking about states and so-called red states, all eyes turn to Texas because it's the second largest state in the country and the largest Republican state. Now, there is a systemic problem there in terms of it slipping that nobody denies, but they overperformed based on what they thought was going to happen this election. Do you see any hope there in moving Greg Abbott more in the direction of Ron DeSantis and Kristi Noem on coronavirus, the state legislature? I mean, are there any opportunities there, or is it the same old, same old?
Same old, same old. I think Governor Abbott is one of the worst governors in America. And I say that because I'm here. And I need to be frank about this. Look, Governor Abbott was a huge supporter of Convention of States, so kudos to him for that. And he made it an emergency item when we passed. But the way I deal with politicians is I don't have allies. For me, politicians are they're good or bad based on what they're doing right now. What was their last vote and what will their next vote be? And Governor Abbott has been frankly terrible and manipulative and dishonest on the COVID stuff. He's played to the radical left. I mean, in a lot of ways, very similar to governors in California or New York or wherever. And we do have Republican majorities in both houses, but I think they live in fear because our majorities are not huge. And so they think, if we do anything that's even slightly conservative, then we're going to lose our majority. The truth is the exact opposite. The more conservative they are, the bigger the majorities get. I'll give you a very specific example. We maintained all of our seats in the Texas legislature. We were really worried about this cycle. There was one Republican seat that was lost, and we picked up another one in exchange. But the one that was lost is the important place of edification, which is it's down in Houston. And a woman named Sarah Davis, who claims to be a Republican, was running to retain her seat. She is pro-choice, pro-high taxes, pro-LGBT stuff, men and women's bathrooms, all that. Like, she's just a leftist. She claims to be a Republican. There's no positions that she has that are Republican. And so she's running as a Republican. It's a relatively moderate district. And she lost. And she lost to a Democrat. Because this is the lesson. When Republicans pretend to be Democrats, then eventually the people will just choose a Democrat. Like, why wouldn't, right? If you're running with all the Democratic policy positions, but you're a Republican, why would you choose a Republican? Just get the real thing. And so the only person who lost in all the races we cared about, we were participating in 18 races. We didn't defend her because I frankly thought she should lose. She lost. And so the lesson in that is Republicans need to act like Republicans. Yes. And the more they act like Republicans, the more they win. It's the opposite of what they think.
And I think, Mark, we saw this so much this year with the so-called minorities. And I just use it because that's what the left is obsessed with.
Right.
And this paradigm from phony Republicans for years that you have to support election fraud, you have to support criminals, you have to support illegal aliens, like, in order to get their vote. And it was like, here you have Trump that on paper, according to their playbook, has done everything possible to insult them. In their mind, in the mind of the establishment, that's the worst way to get their vote. I mean, you say you talk down illegal aliens, oh my gosh, we got a major problem here. And you saw in Texas there the most remarkable thing I've ever seen in politics. I never thought it was possible. The RGV, those counties, Starr, Zapata, Hidalgo and Cameron. I mean, we're talking about in like Starr County, I believe was in the top 5 Hillary counties. It was right up there with Manhattan. It was like 82-20 Hillary majority.
Right.
80-20, roughly around there. And it wasn't just Hillary. I mean, it was enduring for many, many years and decades. Very Democrat. These counties are over 90%, I guess, Hispanic heritage, however they get that in the census.
Yep.
And we saw 40 point swings. He came within 5 in Starr. He flipped Zapata. To me, that shows a blueprint on a state level. They don't want the cartels. They don't want their land being, their sovereignty being trampled upon by the cartels and the drug runners and the legal aliens. And that tells me there's so much more to reach out with. Typically, I'm not into looking at, different demographics. I hate that because we believe that you govern for the people as a whole. That's what governance is about. No policy should ever be directed at any income level, at any demographic. It should be the whole of the people. But what I think is amazing is when you look at the lockdown policies, that truthfully is something. All the things they say hurts minorities and it's just made up. That actually is something that it is a wealthy suburban white privilege to sit and work from your house, earn your $150,000 paycheck, and they're the ones who have to go out and get crushed. They get crushed from the risk of the virus, according to these people that think the virus is the worst thing. Well, they're the ones confronting it. They're the ones enabling your ability to get your Amazon packages for you, right, and live the way you do. Like, I don't have a problem with lockdown. That seems to be working. Yeah. We have such a messaging opportunity. And I just feel like we need, I feel like the Tea Party movement didn't get enough of these people. But I think we can now with an American Sanctuary movement.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there is something very unique about President Trump and the reason that he was able to swing a bunch of Hispanic voters, Asian voters, gay voters, black voters,
Muslims.
What's that?
He got in the 30s with Muslims.
Yeah.
And he got on, basically 50% of the Jewish vote in Georgia and Florida. So Jews and Muslims. I mean, it's like Native Americans too. Some of the Indian reservations, North Carolina, we saw this.
Well, you know what? So here is why I think that is, because the left is just dumbfounded by this. Donald Trump is Donald Trump, love him or hate him. He's going to speak exactly the same to me, a lawyer, white middle-class lawyer, as he speaks to inner city black people. Everybody's just people. And I don't believe, and Donald Trump is so Donald Trump, he doesn't have the ability to pander in the way that most politicians do. He doesn't have a special way of speaking and a special program that he presents to Mexican Americans and to gay Americans and to Muslim Americans. And if you look at the Democratic platform, it's unbelievable. You look at Joe Biden's platform, it's just like, this is what the gays need. This is what the Muslims need. This is what the Jews need. Trump's just like, hey, this is what Americans need. This is what I'm doing for America. And I think it's refreshing to people that you have a man who speaks to everybody as an American, as opposed to a hyphenated American. And I think that's where we win. It's not that we go after the black community with some new and different message. It's that we talk to the black community just like they're part of America because they are.
I think that's a powerful message. I think this is we need an American Sanctuary movement that, hey, you could live here. You could, as long as you're not harming other people and trying to beat other people, it's hands off. And, you have the right to earn a living, the right to run a business, the right to go to church. You have the right to self-defense. And that will be recognized here. And that is the most universal message, because there's good dudes and bad dudes in every type of demographic you could possibly conjure up. And all the good dudes in all the respective demos have that in common.
Yeah.
And
well, look, you and I have more in common with a hardworking, married Hispanic family in the inner city than these elitist Democrats living in New York in their penthouses have. And we value the same things. We value family. We value faith. We value hard work. We value education. We are very well aligned with the majority of Americans. And it's the narrative that matters. The pandering doesn't work anymore. And God bless President Trump. Whatever happens, he blew up the paradigm. And we have the opportunity to have this conversation because of what he did.
Yep. Unbelievable. He built a border wall in the counties with 90% Hispanic voters that voted 80% Democrat and were told, get your stinking border wall out of here. And that is the worst place to put it. And which is why it was never in Texas for many years. It was only in Arizona and California. And he put it there in Starr County. And he swung the vote by a 55-point spread. That is, again, I mean, I think there's a lot to hope for. A lot of people, Mark, are going to be looking to you and your grassroots for the next big movement, the next big Tea Party, the next big revolution that we need in this country that actually measures the severity of the problems that we're confronted with in the time we live in. So, Mark, I mean, we're looking for that next movement. We hope to be hearing from it soon. Where could people come to get involved in what you're doing?
Yeah, just keep an eye on us at conventionofstates.com. Get signed up and understand this. It's about way more than a convention. What it's about is self-governance. That's at the root of self-governance. Yes. But everything we do, we're involved in multiple projects. We did massive get out the vote efforts. Anything that says that the people should govern themselves, that's where you're going to find us. And the Center for Organizing that is at Convention of States.
That's what I love about you. I mean, I'm just saying, Mark, I'm a big supporter of the Convention of the States, but we all know what are you up to? 16, 15 states?
15 states, and it looks like we'll get 8 to 10 in the coming year.
Yeah, and that's more successful than almost any constitutional amendment movement, which was done more the traditional way. But certainly with Article 5 in our 200-year plus history. But nonetheless, we all recognize that that is going to take time we do not have now to deal with corona fascism and things like that. So you're taking that solid grassroots in the states that are connected to the state legislators in many critical states and dealing with life, liberty, property, the coronavirus issues and many other issues, Second Amendment. And this is what I love, not making it a one-trick pony and just having everything go into that and ignoring everything else. So this is a good organization to get involved with. Mark, thanks for joining us. Keep us updated as this movement progresses. Folks, we are out of time. Till tomorrow, God bless y'all, and thank you.
I'm here live in Philadelphia at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. When you hear the phrase lives, fortunes, and sacred honor, these are the folks we should think of, those who anonymously gave their lives. Well, today you have a chance to volunteer. You need to volunteer for conventionofstates.com, the movement that's going to save the country. These folks are willing to step up and give everything. We need you to give just a little bit. Go to conventionofstates.com and volunteer today.